Okay, so this fanfic has mentions of character death and blood in it, so if you're not comfortable with it, it would be better to not listen to this. Long Live the Hero, a fanfic by your friend Willow, written for the server Leedman's Little Monsters. Bluey, please, wake up, please. Leedman sat down next to his fallen ally. They were barely breathing, and a red patch was forming on their chest. It was horrible, and Leed knew there was nothing he could do to stop it. The same thing has happened more times than he can count. Every day, one of his allies would get killed by some masked guy, and then go into a trance-like state, and then just disappear without warning. And now his last ally was killed. He had no one left. Leedman would be lying if he said he wasn't scared. In fact, he was terrified, but deep down he knew they were still alive somewhere, and he was determined to save them, no matter what. The next day, at the same time the figure normally came, Leedman stood outside the bunker, sword in hand. He was shaking, but trying to not let it show. He wanted to kill the figure to show them their mercy. Just then, a massive explosion shook the ground, knocking him down and forcing him to let go of his only weapon. A purple cloud formed at the center, and out stepped the figure with Leed's allies behind him. They were silent, their eyes white, the life in them gone. The figure now stood in front of Leedman. It took off the mask and showed a face Leed has known all his life. You. We meet again, Leedman Hermitara. Nom? The figure laughed, and then summoned the lifeless allies to him. Yes, it's me. Thought you finally got rid of me? You killed our mom! She deserved it, brother. Just face it, I'm better than you. You're a horrible brother, Nom. I should have banished you earlier. Well, in that case, you will die. Nom disappeared, and suddenly a swirling mass of purple fire formed around Leed and the allies. They stood there, not moving, only there to remind him of what he lost. Leed looked at their faces. He could see Abby, Potato, Ace, Posp, Vicky, CBJ, Ben, Sasha, Ori, Sai, Prof X, Bluey, and everyone else staring at him. He looked up and saw his brother floating there. It filled him with hate. Leed looked down and saw a metal pole sticking out of the ground. He picked it up and threw it at Nom, hitting him on the shoulder and forcing him to land. As fast as it came, the fire was gone, and Nom was looking at his hand, which had blood on it. He snarled and summoned a flaming sword. Leed turned and ran to where his sword lay. He picked it up and turned to face Nom. The allies formed a larger circle around the two. Nom was laughing. Leed stood there, the fear gone, replaced with anger. And then they fought. Nom was a strong fighter, but he hadn't met anyone as skilled as his brother. Leed was smart and knew Nom's weakness. Their swords clashed, and blood quickly covered both of them. Eventually, Leed managed to stab Nom through his heart. The two brothers looked at each other, regret in their eyes, and then Nom fell to the ground. The allies' eyes turned back to normal, and they all stood there, confused. Leed smiled and put down his sword. No one, not even him, noticed the massive bloodstain growing on his shirt. Bluey stood alongside the other allies, trying to figure out what happened. The last thing they could remember was laying on the ground, dying, with Leedman by their side. Now they were staying in the same spot they died in, completely fine. They looked up and saw Leed standing next to a tree, leaning against it for support. They started running towards him, wanting to give him a hug. However, about halfway to him, Leedman fell to the ground. Bluey ran faster, almost falling next to him. They turned Leed over onto their back and saw the growing bloodstain over his heart. Tears ran down their face as they grabbed his hand and held onto it as if their life depended on it. Please, Leed, I can't lose you. Please. Leed smiled a bit and wiped a stray tear from Bluey's cheek. I'm sorry, Bluey. I promised I would save you, and I did. It's time for me to go. Bluey nodded, and held on tighter. Soon the other allies stood around Liedman, not saying a word, but rather holding on to each other and crying. A lone voice started singing, the pain in their voice evident. Isn't it lovely, alone, high by the glass, my mind of stone? The rest of the allies joined in. Tear me to pieces, skin of bone. Lied looked at them, smiling his last smile. Hello, welcome home. A bird, or specifically a young sparrow, started whistling the song. It was beautiful. By that point, Lied's eyes were closed, his breath becoming slower and slower. When a bird sang the final note, he took his final breath. Everything was quiet. It was like the world has ended, which, for most of the allies, it has.